And at that time, I think this comes a little later, but I just want to jump ahead because it fits with Unmade Beds totally. There's a picture on your website of you with Jean-Luc Godard, and there's some story that I found somewhere on the internet that at one time you were going to remake ALPHAVILLE and paid him. Can you just mention that? What is it like to meet Godard? What did you talk about with him? Because he's known for his crankiness, et cetera, et cetera.
He's a cranky son of a bitch, but
okay.
But he's yeah. I had met Godard a couple times in Paris. In Deauville first, then in Paris. It was obviously, he was one of my heroes, so I was very nervous to meet him. And then through his producer, Georges de Beauregard, who I was hoping to make a film with in Paris, actually. And I was like concocting up like a kind of a sort of a more punkish French thing that probably was something like a Betty Blue kind of story. But it never happened. But I came back to New York, and basically, Debbie, Harry, and Christine, who I was friends with, we never talked about music. And it was like Patti Smith. We never talked about music, or Richard Hell, or almost any of those musicians, or David Byrne, or Julian Schnabel, or David Sally, any of those people who were doing other media. We always talk about film, and one of the things was always the Godard reference. So, and Debbie and Chris and I and Glenn were all like big Godardophiles, I would say, on some level, and each one of us had like a favorite movie. And one of the movies that we all had a fascination with, which I had already actually just done, because I had already shot The Foreigner, which is very ALPHAVILLE influenced. And Jean-Luc kind of liked that film for its audacity, or its amateurism. And we thought, well, let's remake ALPHAVILLE. We'll get Robert Fripp to play Lemmy Caution, and we'll get Debbie to play Anna Karina part, and etc. And we could shoot it in New York. And I said, well, I know Jean-Luc. I've met him, and he's about to come to New York, and I'm gonna meet, hang out with him, and maybe he'll give us the rights.
Wow.
And they said, yeah, we'll do that. And it was just when Blondie was really taking off. So one of the problems was that we had initially set up this whole thing of making this remake for like, $50,000, which was like, wow, big budget. And so, I talked to Jean-Luc and I said, would you sell us your rights to remake ALPHAVILLE? He said, yeah, sure. So we went to this lawyer, and this lawyer was like a big-time music lawyer, but wrote the worst deal memo. He must have wrote it on a napkin or something. It was the stupidest thing. And we paid Jean-Luc $1,000 in cash, as 10% of what he would eventually get was $10,000 for the rights to remake ALPHAVILLE. So I met with him at the Plaza Hotel, gave him the grand, he signed it. And then we said, hey, we got the rights. Well, it turned out that he didn't own the rights. And when I finally confronted him many years later, I said, you fucker, you sold us the, he said, no, but I sold you my rights. I didn't say I had the rights.
Wow. Oh, that is great.
So I'm hoping someday I can auction that letter on eBay or something.
There you go.
$10,000 or something.
That's
or
amazing.
$1,000.